Don't forget about Clemson. Still, of course, alive in the ACC in the national championship race, despite the loss to Georgia. ACC play begins this week at home against Georgia Tech. And, of course, we go to Jason Priester from allclemson.com to help us break down those Tigers. Jason, how's it going?
It's going all right this week, man. Pretty slow this week. How about yourself?
It's going pretty well. I can't say it's slow because I got this national scene to deal with, and we chase down everybody we can to talk about it. But, yeah, Clemson's in that place where they've been for 4 or 5 years, where since Florida State dropped off the map, it's like, okay, well, they're probably going to make their way through the ACC pretty easily. We shall see. North Carolina State's coming up next week, but they got this opener against Georgia Tech, but not a whole lot of people talking about Clemson right now, probably just expecting that they're going to show up at the ACC championship game with 1 loss, and that's the next time we need to worry about them.
Yeah, that typically be, that is typically the case. Clemson kind of breezes through that ACC schedule, but everybody's talking about Clemson can run the table, get to the playoff, get in that top 4. But right now, week 3, I think Clemson needs to be more concerned with actually looking like a team that resembles a playoff team, because through the first 2 games, that offense has been discombobulated, especially in week 1 against Georgia. It was completely shut down. It looked better against South Carolina State, but you got to consider the opponent. And even in that game, DJ still looks like he's settling into the role of being the guy, the starting quarterback at a school like Clemson. Unlike last year, he was the backup. It was Trevor Lawrence getting all the notoriety, all the attention. Even when he was starting 2 games, a lot of the focus was on Lawrence, having COVID and all that. Now all the spotlight's completely on him. And this offense is kind of in a growing stage. And I think it's going to be a process. He doesn't have a lot of in-game experience with his receivers. Those running backs are very inexperienced. Their most experienced back, Lynn J. Dixon's in the doghouse. I'm not sure when he's going to get out. But, he's never played with Justin Ross. He had Amari Rogers and Cornell Powell as receivers last year. Both those guys are gone. And he's having to, find his way on the field during games right now. And it's showing a little bit in his play. He's still struggling a little bit with touch on some of his shorter passes. I think he still puts too much heat on some of his balls, and his accuracy's been a little bit off. But, I don't think it's by any stretch all him. I don't think the receivers have played very well. There's been some miscommunications, running the wrong routes, stuff like that. And I just think it's a work in progress. And Dabo Swinney said something yesterday that kind of really hit home with me. He said something about, he wasn't really concerned that his team wasn't playing their best football right now. He wanted them to get better from each week to the next, and he would much rather prefer them be playing their best football at the end of the season. That great teams play their best football at the end of the season, not the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I hate to just look at a stat sheet and make conclusions from that without seeing the game. But any quarterback that hits 14 of 24, especially playing for Clemson against the South Carolina State, not the greatest at completion percentages. So you talked about that a little bit with some miscommunications and so forth. And then, as you say, Taysom Pumachow comes into the game, hits 7 of 10. So there's, of course, they're not going to talk about it publicly, but there's really no quarterback battle here, is there?
No, not at all. Pumachow, he looked really good the other day against South Carolina State. He looked really sharp. It looks like they have really worked on some of his mechanics, his footwork, his throwing motion. He looks like a different quarterback. But let's be honest, this is a guy 5 months removed from rupturing his Achilles. That's not the guy you want leading your team, especially when you're trying to get back to the playoff and maybe even have national title aspirations despite the opening loss to Georgia. This is DJ's team. Make no mistake. There is no quarterback controversy at all.
And to your point, Lynn J. Dixon with only 1 carry against Georgia. Then he came back with only 4 carries last week. So we'll see how this running back distribution works out between he and Maffa and Shipley, of course. I'm checking out this Georgia Tech team, which, of course, made headlines in a negative way in week 1 as one of these casualties of the group of 5. Northern Illinois goes into Atlanta and beats them 22-21. And Georgia Tech, man, if you look at their schedule, they can't be affording to lose those kind of games. They've got Notre Dame, Georgia, Clemson. They've got a pretty packed schedule for an ACC squad, and it's not looking too good through the first 2 weeks, despite a win against all of Kennesaw State. So Jeff Sims was the guy last year, but Jordan Yates has taken over for them. But I do remember the score of last year's game. It was, I think it was close for about 8 seconds, and then a 73-7. So we're looking at a pretty bad Georgia Tech team again.
Yeah, kind of like with South Carolina State, I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot to be gleaned from this game this week. Outside of wanting to see the offense take another step in the right direction. There's some storylines on the defense to follow. They still haven't allowed a touchdown. Can they keep that Georgia Tech offense out of the end zone, and hold a third straight team from scoring a touchdown? That's just something fun to think about. I know Brent Venables, said that would be something cool, see how long they could stretch that streak of not letting a team into the end zone. But yeah, this Georgia Tech team's just not very good. They won't even say who's starting at quarterback this week. I think Sims actually got injured in that first game, but
okay.
I know Jeff Collins Tuesday, they wouldn't even say who was going to start, just that they had 3 quarterbacks that were above the line. They don't like to release that depth chart. They just list guys who are above the line, whatever that means. But so that would be Yates, and I would imagine Sims and the guy. There was another guy, I forgot his name. He played a snap or two when Yates' helmet came off the other day against Kennesaw State. But I would be surprised if Sims doesn't play this week. But yeah, that Georgia Tech team, man, I really liked that Jeff Collins hire when they first made it, and that was going to be a several year process when he took that thing over. He's got to rebuild that whole roster, but this is year number 3, and it kind of looks like they might be trending in the wrong direction. Maybe that hire wasn't as great as I thought it was, but again, you got to rebuild that whole roster. It's an entirely new offense, moving away from that option. And, it might be a 5-year kind of deal minimum before we even could start making logical judgments on that.
Jahmyr Gibbs is a good back, so is Jordan Mason, but little else there on Georgia Tech's offense and defense. It could be a rough year for the Yellow Jackets, but they're also sitting in the right place if you want to recruit talent. Atlanta produces about as much NFL talent as any city in America. So if they can get him to stay at home, then, of course, he's going to be able to upgrade the program. I got Jason Priester on the line talking Clemson football, and you can get the full analysis there at allclemson.com on SI. And Georgia Tech, Clemson coming up this week, in North Carolina State the next week. And that kind of brings me to a broader perspective on just ACC football, with not a whole lot going on with the Tigers this week. As we talked about before we hit the record button, 2-6 against the Power 5. North Carolina State, that looked like one of those under the weeds, could be a game that jumps up at Clemson, and still could be. We'll see. They did lose to Mississippi State this week, but do you have any thoughts about the ACC?
It's bad. It's worse than bad. I've 2 years in a row, I've gone on record saying I thought the ACC was going to be better, that year. And it wasn't last year, and it's looking like that's not going to be the case this year. I think I told you on here a week or two ago, I thought North Carolina State had a chance to win as many as 10 games. I thought they got a lot of guys back from that team last year. They had decimated by injuries last year. I thought Dave Dorn might have his best team to date there in Raleigh this year. And, that's a bad loss that and it's not just because of who they lost to, but it's the way they lost. And I admit I didn't get to watch it. But it looked like, from what I could tell, it was a pretty sloppy performance. They turned the ball over several times. I think you said they allowed a kickoff return for a touchdown, and they were held out in the end zone. I mean, it's just a bad loss. The ACC in general, like you said, it's just bad. That UNC losing to Virginia Tech week 1, that just set the tone for the season, in my opinion, and was fortune to, how can I say, just an indicator of what's coming down the road. I don't see a lot of big wins for ACC teams, out of conference over Power 5 teams, especially towards the end of the year when they get to those SEC rivalries. I mean, outside of Clemson, being favored over South Carolina, is Georgia Tech going to beat Georgia? I doubt that. I mean, is Louisville going to beat? I guess Louisville and Kentucky might be a toss-up, but who knows?
I don't think it's a toss-up, Jason. I don't think it's a toss-up. I think they got a chance, but I don't think it's a toss-up. And
that Louisville team is just going in. That's another one going in the wrong direction in year 3 under Scott Satterfield. I don't know what's going on there. That's another one that I thought was a really good hire, and it is just not working out. Something's not right in Louisville. I don't know what it is.